All righty. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the meeting today. This is one of our scheduled assessment meetings that we have twice a year. And so I wanted to take this time with all of you today to talk about our new program review
I
process.
already got it on.
And so we're really excited about it. It's going to be a lot more user-friendly than the process we've done in the past. And so I want to go ahead and talk a little bit about how we sort of have done things with program review in the past. If you're a new program coordinator, you may not have even logged in to look at our program review process. There is a module that we have in Compliance Assist alongside planning, which you've probably seen before for our program student learning outcomes and our unit plans. But our program review module is where we've historically kept all of the report and documentation that a program coordinator puts together every 3 years to do a comprehensive review of your academic program. And so up until the pandemic, we kept everything in that module, and we sort of kept up with our 3-year review calendar, which was on a staggered basis. So you might be doing your program review in a completely different semester than one of your colleagues, but within a certain time frame of 3 years, every single academic program would go through and complete this narrative process. But of course, the pandemic has sort of, like most things, has given us an opportunity to look at the way we've always done things and to maybe make some changes. So that's what I want to share with you today. So you can see here on the screen, the program review module had some pros and cons. It was, of course, all organized and kept all in one spot, which was very convenient. And also it served as a repository for your program level metric data, which someone over here in academic affairs, we sort of switched roles of who entered the data every term, or every year rather, but the data was on a term-by-term basis. But that's a really labor-intensive process, but that is one pro of it. So cons. There were 24 separate forms in the program review. And those of you who've done the program review over there before know that it was sort of a involved and confusing process because there were 24 separate forms that had different questions on them that had to be completed. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, it was a con that the entry of the data was very labor intensive for an academic affairs staff, and also for IE who had put everything together, really for data that may only be looked at once every 3 years. And of course, the format didn't really support a continuous improvement process because it was out by itself in this separate module. You know, a program coordinator may not log in as often as they need to, and we kind of forgot about it when we thought about our annual processes of goal setting. Because it was so separated, it wasn't streamlined. So earlier this semester, Williette and Richard and Cleve and I got an opportunity to meet with Dr. Tobin and talk about how we really need to make the program review process a stronger process and really make it easier for us to include it in our goal setting and continuous improvement practices. So first of all, we did this every 3 years, which included, if you hadn't done a program review before, it included the input of a program review team. So it wasn't only your advisory board members, but it was graduates, all of your faculty, someone from student services, someone from the library. There were a lot of different stakeholders who were involved in this program review team that helped the program coordinator then write your narrative portions of your program review and set goals for the next 3 to 5 years. So in addition to streamlining and moving things over into the planning module, which I'm going to show you in a few minutes, we also realized that some parts of the program review really need to happen every year. And we want to give you the opportunity to reflect on different parts of the work that you do in your program. So, any data review and analysis, your curriculum changes and updates that you make. And of course, every year when you meet with your advisory board and you hear the feedback of what they need our students to have to be, more successful employees, and also how you need to change things in your program to stay current with what's happening in business and industry. All of these things really sort of sparked the idea that it needed to be an annual process. So I want to share with you, this is a quick overview of the 3-year review. That last column, you can see all of these items were the 24 separate forms in the program review before that had to be filled in. So now you can see that we're going to start doing the 1-year process. This second column, the 1-year process is not going to be as involved as the 3 years. So your 1-year program review form that you complete, there won't be a review team involved. These will just be questions that you're answering about how the work you've done over the year and your plan for the next year. The 3-year review will be very much the same as it was when it was over in the program review module. You'll have an opportunity to really meet with that team, talk about what your goals are, and then fill in all of the responses. Okay, so in addition to those questions, you'll remember that we put in the data for you, your program level metric data for enrollment, retention, persistence, the number of graduates, the number of credentials, job placement. And then also there were spots for student success rate and course success rate that weren't put there, but we had planned to. So now you'll get an opportunity to have an easier way to review this data and then reflect on it and put some information into your annual program review that really is going to help your continuous improvement thought process every year. So previously, all that data was sitting in that same module for you. Going forward, we are going to have what we call a student success data report card. The name of that may change, but that's what we're planning for right now. That was Richard's term. But Cleve and the IE team in fall are going to come up with a way that it may be a dashboard, it may be a report, but there will be one place where your program data lives, and you'll refer to that in order to help you complete your annual program review. So I can't show you pictures or screenshots of that today, but that is coming. And once it does, I'll do another one of these webinars and make sure that there's a YouTube video that will show you how to access it and how you can incorporate review it and incorporate it into your responses in your program review. So, as I mentioned, now the program review is going to be in the same place where everything else you have to do every year is. It'll be in the planning module. It's just going to be another choice on the drop-down list, and I'll give you a demonstration here in a minute. But it's going to help you because it's very easy as you're filling out your program review and you're thinking about what you've achieved. You're not going to have to leave that screen, log into planning, look at your program review, or look at your unit plan, pardon me, or your SLOs. If there's anything else that you need to refer to help you in completing your program review, it is all in one place. It will just be a matter of a few clicks to go and look at the other data and responses that you've entered. So we think it's going to be a lot more user-friendly for the program coordinator, and also, on our side for academic affairs, for administration, for Williette, and for IE just to be able to have all of our documentation in one place. So I am going to do a training demonstration for you now so you can see what the program review form looks like. And so then afterwards, we'll talk about some dates. So give me just 1 second, and I'm going to switch screens here. Okay, so, alrighty. Now I'm going to show you, in case you need a refresher, how to get to the planning module. There are a couple of different ways. I just want to verify, can you guys see my screen? Can you see the internet screen? Give me a thumbs up, somebody. Okay, thank you, Richard. I appreciate that. All righty. So obviously I have it saved, so it goes to mine automatically. Very nice. But for most of you guys, you're going to get to planning through SharePoint. And so if you kind of go down, scroll down to the bottom, you'll see this one here, Compliance Assist Planning. You can use this link here. Or if you're off campus, you can simply go to the college website, scroll down to the very bottom and click on Faculty Staff Access. And there's a Compliance Assist link here as well. You click on Planning, and that will take you to the planning module as well. So when you come to the planning, like main screen, it takes you to a dashboard. You're going to see something different than I do, just based on your access. Not everyone will see the same thing. But as you will remember, when you're doing your unit plans or your slows, you're going to click on this plans button here. And that's going to help you navigate everything you want to see in the planning module. So we're going to choose a year, start at the top and work your way down on this left side panel. We're going to choose 23-24. And then once again, instead of your unit plans or your slows, you will click on this new program review choice here. And then you want to find where you are on the org chart. So I can see everything. You're probably just going to see your program level. So you may not have to do as many clicks as I am, but I'm just going to use CPT as an example here. Okay, so now you want to create a new program review. The first time that you guys do this will be in the 23-24 year. So you'll click on this blue plan item button here. And from the drop down, you get two choices, either an annual review or a 3-year comprehensive review. The first time that we all do this, it will be a 3-year comprehensive review. So in 23-24, we do the comprehensive review. In 24-25 and 25-26, it'll be a 1-year. So for right now, we're going to do the 3-year first, since that has everything. The 1 year has a lot of the same questions. It's just that some are taken out. Same questions, just, it's shorter. It's a little bit more compact. So the comprehensive review is the one we're doing first. And so very much like a unit plan or a slow, this product is way more user-friendly. No more will you have to click into each individual page or, subject, and then go up to the top, hit edit, and then see a bunch of boxes. The entire review narrative is all one form. So this is going to save you a lot of time clicking back and forth. When you hit print, it's going to print the whole thing, not in pieces, which is going to be, I think, a lot more convenient. Also, one really good thing about planning that program review does not do, this auto saves. So if you are working on this form and someone comes to your door or the phone rings, you don't have to worry about this timing out and losing any information that you may have typed in. So that's a very good thing. Whether or not you hit the save button at the bottom, it saves pretty much every 30 seconds or so automatically. So that's a good thing. Alrighty, so I'm going to take a little bit of time to go through the individual questions. There have been some additions and changes from the previous program review, so it'll be really good, a good refresher for those of you who haven't done a program review since before COVID, but also for our new program coordinators. It'll be a good opportunity for you to see what the process involves. So at the beginning, you're going to be given the opportunity to put in progress. Your progress until, Williette does the final stamp of approval that you're good to go. It's going to be ongoing. It'll only be changed to completed once she's approved it, and I'll do that for you. So when you log in and you start your new program review, it will just need to be ongoing. So as you come down, it will automatically sort of give you this is a required field. So you're going to have to rename this field to your program name. And so in this case, computer technology, NSIA. Of course, you'll be asked for general information as you were with the other form, your name, and then your program review team members. Now, this is that, team we were talking about earlier that's going to have a lot of different stakeholders. You can see here, we've copied over from the instructions and given you a little bit of information about who you may want to include on this review team. It is going to vary, though, from program to program. And so we've given you ideas here, but if you, for instance, are not able to get a general studies faculty, that's fine. Or a library representative, depending on when people are available, when you have, this meeting, that's fine. We just want to give you some ideas of who could possibly be on your team. So I am going to scroll right back up. I kind of went over it really quick. I want to go up and put a little bit of emphasis on this statement here. This is just general information about what the program review is about and what your objectives are, like why we do a program review. So this was also a part of the cover page in the old system, but we've gone ahead and put it on the individual form here. So it'll show up every time you print. So once you get through sort of general information about your program, we ask you to talk a little bit about the program history. If you're a new program coordinator, you may end up calling your dean or calling me and asking for program history. That's certainly something that we can provide you with, as well as a copy of the last program review that was done. In our case, I think the last time we had a program review was fall 2019. And so we'll be picking up with the process again. So I'm happy to send you a copy of the program review that your predecessor did. So we're going to ask you questions like discuss the overall status of your program. Discuss recommendations that have been made. If your program is accredited, we ask you some very specific information about your accreditation cycle. So if you aren't accredited, you would just put no or not applicable here and then skip on down. However, we want to know if you are accredited, when was the last approval date that came on that last letter that you got from your agency, when your next review is due, and then when's the next action due, and what is that action? So, you may have an annual report. So if that's the case, then give us a little bit of information about, what you're going to be doing next to satisfy the requirements of your accrediting agency. Then next, we ask for you to talk about your program goals. We want you to provide information on how your program goals support the mission of the college. We also want to see if you have a program mission statement. Not all of our programs do, but I know that there are certainly some in the health sciences areas and nursing, especially they do. So we've given you an opportunity to talk about that if it's applicable to you. Next, we want a list of your current advisory committee members, their positions, and who they work for. As I said earlier, the team of people who you get together for this 3-year comprehensive program review, it's going to be vital that you have your advisory board involved. Honestly, the best way for you to make sure that this happens is to do your program review sort of questions and process during your advisory board meeting. That's why we're rolling this process out now. So that way you'll have an opportunity to see what it's going to be like, see what's required of you on the updated form. And then when you have your advisory board meeting in November, you can invite those other stakeholders that would be a part of the program review team and really get everything done during that November meeting. Now, certainly you are not required to do that, but we know that for a lot of you, getting your industry, partners to meet can be very difficult because they're really busy. So we certainly want you to take the opportunity to kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, if you will, and get everyone together all at once. So you'll list their names there. We want you to talk with us about how the composition of the committee represents your profession. Do you have people who are currently practitioners, students, retirees, etc.? We ask that you discuss how the program coordinator solicits recommendations from the advisory committee, and talk about the recommendations that were made during the last meeting. So you'll be, filling this out in late fall and early spring. So talk about this coming November's advisory board meeting. What did your advisory board members have to say? And, what are their ideas and changes that are going to affect the improvement of your program? Next, you'll put a list of your faculty members in and indicate if they're full-time or part-time. And then talk about how your faculty are supported to do their work. Talk about, have they been, what are their qualifications? If there is training that's been made available to them, you can discuss that. And then, that's kind of here what we were thinking during this question here about talking about how your faculty remain current in the field. And you can list those professional development activities that have occurred over the last year. Next, if your program has a separate or a specific policy and procedures manual, we ask that you indicate that here. I think Lynn Fralix has one, I know, for PTA, and I think nursing has one as well. So, you can indicate when that document was last updated or revised. Also, we want you to talk about local, state, or federal mandates. Other than accreditation. So for instance, we've put in fine print here, include things that are specific like OSHA, South Carolina Health, DHEC regulations, etc. If that applies to you, you can complete this field. So the next, curriculum. If you'll remember, in the previous program review module, we asked for you to copy and paste your model out of the catalog into the box. The formatting was always a nightmare, so we've made it much easier. All you can do here is upload a document. And so you'll link a document here, just scan your catalog page and upload it here. And then we ask that you talk about the curriculum changes that you've made over the last year. And so, you can, if you have to, you can refer back to your notes or even look at your request in the in ECM, in the curriculum committee application as well. And then we want you to talk about a specific example of a program improvement that you implemented into your program as a result of DACM, slow review, advisory committee, we want an example of any instance where you took any input from any of these processes and made a program improvement. And so this really could vary very much depending upon what your example is, but we would like at least one example. And so if you've recently done a DACM, you'll have lots to talk about specific to the DACM. Of course, slow reviews, every year you guys, once you do your slows, you make small changes all the time, adjustments to ensure that your students are successful. Unit plans, and of course, those advisory board committee meetings, that's a huge one. I know that all of you take their feedback into account. So you'll put an example there. And then we're getting to that point where our new data review section is. So as I stated before, you'll refer to the student success data scorecard. And then depending on what the metric is, in this case, this first one is enrollment. Depending on what the metric is, you'll have different things to chat about. So the first question here, discuss enrollment trends by demographic. Why do you think these trends exist? So when we say demographic, we mean race, ethnicity, gender, whether they're full-time or part-time. For some of you, it may be, you're seeing differences in enrollment between, different offerings. So is your certificate or diploma enrollment much higher than your AAS degree enrollment? And talk about that and why you think that's the case. And then, of course, also another question in regards to enrollment, based on your analysis above, how should your program efforts change or be focused in order to improve enrollment in your program? So for all of these data questions that are going to follow in this section, really we follow this format. We ask you to look for trends, do some analysis, some comparison, really reflect on the data that's provided to you. And then once you've done that, in the second question here, we're going to ask you then to close the continuous improvement loop that we've talked about in the past and say, okay, I see what the data says. Next year, I'm going to do X in order to improve whatever the metric may be, enrollment, graduates, etc. So as I'll scroll down here, we'll go through each of the metrics, and you can see these two questions for each. There's one for fall to fall retention. And so we put a little caveat here. If your program begins in a term other than fall, you're going to compare the first semester with the next year. So for instance, you may start in spring. In that case, you're going to be comparing spring to spring rather than fall to fall. So, but the majority of our programs start in fall. So that's why we worded it that way. And also that's sort of the definition of retention as to persistence. So anyway, just keep that in mind as you're answering that retention question, or questions rather. Then we move to fall to spring persistence. Same thing. If you start in spring, it's going to be semester 1 to semester 2. You'll talk about persistence and then talk about continuous improvement. Next is graduation and graduates. So the number of graduates. You can talk about what you can do to increase the number of graduates in your program. The number of credentials. There are 2 questions as well. Job placement. And in this case, you're not going to be referring necessarily to that dashboard I talked about earlier, but the program evaluation report that Cleve sends out every year via email. That's the one you'll refer to answer these 2 questions. And then student success rate and course success rate information will also be included on the student success data scorecard. And that concludes the data questions. So previously, all of those tables that were in the program review module, they were on 5 different pages. You would look at them, and then you would go back about 6 pages and answer just one question. So while we asked for you to look at the data and respond to it, it was really too vague. And in a lot of cases, we didn't necessarily get back as much of a response as we wanted from you all, because, you would choose one data point that really stood out to you, or that, was a part of maybe your unit plan objectives, and you talked about that specific metric. But we feel like having all of these questions here is going to give you an opportunity to do more reflection and really help you set better goals. So next is a section about courses. This also was mirrored in the previous review, and the questions are pretty similar. We want you to, make sure and identify yes or no, whether you've got all of your SLOs in your course syllabi. And also, do your course syllabi contain the course learning outcomes, which those outcomes that are specific to that course as well. How often are your course syllabi reviewed? And how does the review of your course syllabi align with the DACOM process, advisory committee input, etc.? So what are you doing to improve or change or adapt your course syllabi depending on feedback that you get from those processes? And are all of your course syllabi available in simple syllabus? Hopefully the answer needs to be yes to that one. And then, of course, questions about instruction next. We want you to talk about the enhancements to instruction to your program, and we have a little bit of specific information here to help you answer this question. Include innovations developed and implemented over the last year, such as new methodologies, designs, or classroom innovations. It can be the introduction of, simulations, new equipment, software, any of those types of changes you'll discuss in this field. And then, of course, you can talk about any community activities or service projects that may be involved in your program, or that may be planned as well. I know that for some of you during the pandemic, a lot of those sort of community activities had to change and adapt. So, even talk about that process here, kind of what has changed, and also what are your plans going forward. Okay, so then we'll talk about articulation agreements. If your program happens to have agreements with for your partners, for your institution partners, you can talk about that here. Discuss any activities or awards that distinguish your program. You'll get to talk about any workshops or conferences that you or your faculty attended over the last year that really helped drive those instructional enhancements that you talked about in one of those fields above. And so then we get to the planning questions. So after you've considered all of the changes and improvements from, different processes and input from different stakeholders, talk about your plans. We ask you to talk about your unit plan requests. And actually, there are two unit plan sort of related questions here, and these were also in the previous version. This is a new question that we've added, assessment and SEIs. So your SEI results that are going to be in the new Smart Eval system. We want you to just sort of talk about those results. Were there any interesting or things that you didn't expect from those results, and how you responded to them? And then what changes in courses were made to because of those results? Student services, we want you to briefly discuss any services or those services that are available to your program students. These questions are very much the same as they were before. There are two related to student services, and then also questions related specifically to academic support services rather than student support services, which mostly would come from the student services department, counseling, etc. These questions about academic support have, more to do with advising, library services, things that are very specific to academic affairs. We ask you to talk about distance learning services utilized by your faculty. and how distance learning students who are in need of support, tutoring, etc., how are those online students served? We asked for your feedback on student advising for your program. And then equipment and technology. Previously, there were two separate forms, one that was specific to computers or labs, those types of technology that you may or may not use in your program, and then a separate form that for program equipment. We've put those two together, and really there's just one question now for those. So we've consolidated it a little bit. You're still asked about the physical facilities housing your program. And if you've had any new changes, if you moved, if you've had any renovations, you get an opportunity to talk about those changes. And also, if you're wanting to make some changes, if you need renovations, you can talk about it here. There are questions about marketing, about your budget. So in the previous form, there was a table there that had some budget information. Now of course, you're able to have everyone has your budget meeting. So we really felt that wasn't necessarily needed, since, you have access to your budget and you can always talk with your dean about budget changes. And of course, Williette as well, about budget changes that you need. So we wanted to just put the question here for you to respond and really think about changes that may be upcoming. If you need to make a big purchase, a huge piece of equipment, things that you kind of see coming forward, you can talk about it in that field. And then finally, we get to the goals and projections. So through this process, you'll have done a lot of thinking and reviewing, and have a lot of chances to talk about the improvements that you've made and the things that you see that need to be improved. So we want to start summing it all up down here at the bottom and talk about your goals and projections. So first of all, this first question is really specific to what's going to happen over the next 3 years. So then, based on your analysis of your program data, talk about the objectives for the next cycle. So these, and there's a note here, these may become next year's unit plan objectives. So the first question, you're really talking about the big things that need to come over the next 3 years, whereas this next one is really about, okay, next year I really need to do X, Y, Z, and it can help guide your unit plan objectives. Next, what documentation or evidence is going to demonstrate that you're making progress towards your goals? We want you to talk about changes or improvements to planning, assessment, course outcomes, and your offerings. And then finally, your committee recommendation. So when you have that meeting, that big meeting with everyone together, your advisory board and these other stakeholders, what is their feedback? And so this is really going to vary depending upon group. This is kind of going to be the summing up of what happens during that meeting here in this field. So a little bit of extra information too to kind of guide that process. Recommendations should be discussed with the program coordinator, revised and finalized as needed, and reviewed with your division dean. The review team meetings are intended to be a peer review outlining program achievements and concerns, and should include suggestions for program improvement. So really, we want them to, of course, give you feedback on how things are going. But in addition, the really important part is, how can we get better? What can we do to better serve industry, graduates, etc., going forward? And then finally, if there's anything that you didn't get to say, or something that you have a plan for more further in the future, for 5 years instead of 3, if there was something that you as a program coordinator did not get to talk about earlier in these narratives, there is a field, kind of a catch-all field at the bottom, which is called Program Coordinator Summary. And then finally, the administrative approval here at the bottom. So now this done, as I told you earlier, as you go in over time to fill in these different fields, it will auto save, but you of course can, if you are concerned about your connectivity, your internet, wherever you may be, if you were doing this off campus, you can always, type into one field and then scroll down to the bottom and hit done, and it's saved. And then of course it'll take you right back to that program page where you are, and you can see here is the saved document. And then as you work on this, and return to it, you'll just click right back in, look for the fields that you need to work on, and continue to fill in the document, over several months. Sorry, I didn't mean to do the fast scroll and give everybody a headache. Alrighty, so this is a 3-year review. I know I mentioned to you earlier that in 24-25, you will do an annual review. You don't need to have that big team of people there during your advisory committee meeting. It's a much shorter form, as I indicated over in my PowerPoint, but I will quickly click into it so you can see what it looks like. It is the same questions, just not all of them are included. And so you'll have an opportunity to fill that out in just the same way. And it does auto save as well. And you can see, even though I was only in there for a second, I didn't hit save at the bottom and I didn't even fill anything in. It did save it for me. So if you happen to click into one to just look at it, but you don't fill anything out and you're like, oh, wait, that's not the one. I was just looking. All you have to do is click right back into this form that you don't want to keep, scroll all the way to the bottom and click delete. So a good rule of thumb is, as you're working on, the one that you're going to keep, make sure it has a name. It makes it easier for you once you change that name field at the beginning to know you're working in the right form. Okay. Alrighty, so now I'm going to click back to my PowerPoint and talk about timeline and dates, and then I'll hit any questions. Okay, I've got to click through. Here we go. Okay, can everyone see my PowerPoint screen? I don't see any thumbs up and I don't see any faces, so I hope that you can.
Yes, they're there.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay. Sorry, I've got multiple screens, so when you share it makes everything interesting. Okay, here's our timeline, guys. Alrighty, so by March 30th, this recording will be posted to YouTube and a link will be shared with you, as well as a step-by-step written guide that I'll go ahead and provide you with as well. And I'll send those together, the link to the video, as well as that document in the same email by the end of next week. So in early fall, the IE department will finalize what that report will look like. There are several opportunities that they have to present the data to you. They're just trying to find the best way to do it. So stay tuned. More information about that will be coming shortly. So on November the 7th, as we're getting a little bit closer to the time that you're going to be meeting with the team and really getting this process going, at that point, I'm going to have an in-person workshop to go over this one more time in a computer lab, to give all of you the opportunity to sit and for us to really look at it hands-on to go over. That'll be on November the 7th. And then, of course, mid-November is when just like every year, we're going to do your advisory board meetings. And you need to take the opportunity to do the program review team and the advisory board meeting all together. And now, granted, like I said, you do not have to if you want to, but it's a very good opportunity for you to get everybody in the same room all at once and make less of a burden, less meetings for your advisory board members to attend. Okay, so then once we get back, spring 2024, January 3rd through 12th, I will be available for one-on-one appointments to meet with those of you who, have started the process and maybe you're confused or you need additional help. I'll take that time and make sure that I'm available for meetings with individuals as needed. Due date, February the 24th, your 3-year comprehensive program review will be due for all programs. So previously we staggered due dates. Now that we've changed this process to an annual one, everybody is going to have these program reviews due at the end of February every year. So this first one will be the 3-year comprehensive, and that'll be due on the 22nd of February. By March 15th, we'll ask that all of the deans have had a chance to look at all of their program reviews for those in their division and have given feedback to the program coordinator. Of course, you really need to probably ask your dean before that, but we wanted to have a little bit of cushion for time for the deans to look at the program reviews and make sure that they're complete or that there isn't something that a program coordinator might have forgotten to talk about. And then by April 15th, 2024, Williette will have had an opportunity to review all of the program reviews. And then at that point, she will either approve your review or she will send it back to you with notes for changes or updates that may need to be made. Okay, so now at this point, I will take questions if anyone has any questions.
Leah, can I add something real quick? I would like to tell any of the program coordinators that if they're doing their 3-year review process and they wanted to meet with me to go over the resources the library has, like specifically, or had questions, this is a good time to do it. Because when I worked at Greenville, that's how they had it loaded in, as sort of, I'd schedule a meeting with them and prepare sort of a list of things we had. And they found it helpful, or used a document when they had other, to document the resources they needed specifically. But I'd be welcome to do that for anyone if they had the time to do that. So I just wanted to tell the group that.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Jason. Any other questions before we close?
I can say I like it.
Good. Thank you, Melissa. I feel like it's going to be so much easier to use than the 24 separate forms to fill out. There's just one. Yeah.
Definitely.
Anyone else? Okay, so this was just the initial rollout of the process. There will be loads of opportunities for you to take a look and ask questions. And you can certainly go ahead and see these forms now. If you want to go ahead and log into the planning module and take a look, you certainly can do that. But yeah, we'll be talking about it more as the year goes on. So thank you so much for attending the meeting today. And I hope you have a great weekend. Thank you so much.